Welcome back on Latinos for Trump podcast. I'm your host here, Bianca Gracia, President of Latinos for Trump, and my co-host is Rolando Rodriguez, my assistant director in South Texas. We are accompanied here by Senator Maria Fernanda Cabal out of Colombia. We want to thank you, Maria, for joining us this evening on this special broadcast with the United States and Colombia.
María, te queremos dar las gracias por estar con nosotros en esta entrevista entre Estados Unidos y Colombia.
Thanks for the invitation.
Gracias por la invitación.
Yes, wonderful. Maria, so we wanted to bring you on our show today to discuss some very important issues that are going on, obviously in the United States as well as in Colombia. I would like to know, obviously, your country is also dealing with COVID. And I'd like to know how that situation is going, how you guys are tackling. As I said before, you are a senator in Colombia. And so you are obviously involved in the government. And I want to know, how is your country doing? And what are the steps that you guys are taking right now in combating the COVID-19?
Sí, María,
Okay.
Queremos saber, senadora, queremos saber la situación de cómo están ustedes llevando a cabo la situación del coronavirus. Sabemos que eres senadora y estás en medio de todo lo que es el gobierno de tu país, que es Colombia, y queremos saber en Estados Unidos cómo están atacando la situación del coronavirus.
Okay, the government started the quarantine about 3 months ago. It's going to be up 3 months ago. Mm-hmm. We are doing much better than our neighborhood. In fact, one of the worst was Ecuador, the first one who has the contagious of COVID that increased so rapidly was Ecuador, because they have a lot of migrants that migrated 20 years ago, 18 years ago to Spain, and they returned to Spain the Christmas time. So when they returned, they brought the virus. So
wow.
It was amazing how it started in Ecuador. In fact, today I think they have around more than 3,000 deaths, I think more. Now the curve is decreasing, and then you got Panama, who, of course, because it's a hub, many airlines come to the Panama City airport. They got the virus very strong. So these neighbors from us were worse than us. We did the quarantine. It was not easy because you know that about 50% of our population is informal workers. So an informal worker lives by the day-by-day work. So It has caused many problems because the poor get poorer, the middle class is getting poor too, and the companies and the owner of the companies, many companies have broken up. We have today, I think, around 4 million or more unemployed people during these 3 months. So there were always the dispute among if it's the health is first or the economy. So everyone were talking and debating about that. But you know that economy is wealth. Economy means how do you say that? The way you can live better. Economy. Yes. Finally, it's in the inner behavior of each individual. Even when you start in the morning and you choose that you're going to take a cup of coffee because you bought that coffee in the market, you choose it. So economy, it's in the inner life of every one of us. So that's a dispute that is out of the reasonable argumentation. Today, the central government opened the business, first the construction business 3 weeks ago, with schedules that allowed the public transportation not to be so crowded. and allowed also the manufacturer companies. They asked the entrepreneurials to have different schedules, one's open in the morning until midtime, others in the midtime until night. I think it worked. It worked because otherwise it will be a disaster. We won't get up again, at least in 10 years, to recover from what is happening
Wow.
in our economy.
So it sounds like hold on, Rolando. It sounds like you are facing a lot of the same issues we are here in the United States. It was health versus the economy. Um, so I didn't realize that you guys were also dealing with the same thing and having to shut down and all of that and the numbers that you're seeing. Rolando, do you want to go ahead and just interpret, but in what she said in a very basic so that our Spanish
Claro,
speakers.
lo voy a decir en una forma muy cortita, ¿no? Lo que
Sí,
la senadora nos está comentando es de que, bueno, ellos han batallado también, pero la situación más difícil ha sido en los países vecinos alrededor de Colombia, como Ecuador y Panamá. En Ecuador, bueno, todo el mundo lo vimos, ¿no? Cuando estaba la pandemia en su apogeo, cómo caía la gente aún en las calles, que fue una situación demasiado difícil. Y también nos está comentando la senadora de que en Colombia han aplicado ciertas estrategias que han funcionado muy bien, como la apertura de algunos negocios contra otros en diferentes horarios y que eso les ha ayudado bastante. ¿Es correcto, María Fernanda?
Sí, pero es importante que digas que sí tuvimos cuarentena desde el 23 de marzo.
Wow, desde el 23 de marzo. Bueno, ¿y ahorita siguen en cuarentena o ya terminó?
Seguimos en cuarentena una parte de la población, no la que le está permitido trabajar.
Perfecto. Bueno, sin duda un gran desastre económico, ¿no? Para todo América Latina e inclusive Estados Unidos.
Yes, thank you. And so Maria, Maria, I want to ask you, Senadora, a very important question. As we know here in the United States, our president has been speaking about the hydrochloroquine that is being used for those that do get the COVID, along with zinc and a Z-Pack, and that those people seem to recover at a faster rate. Can you tell me, in Colombia, are you all using that same protocol, or what is working for those in Colombia that are having to get the COVID, and or are you using something completely different? And what is the rate? Because here in the United States, about 98 to 99% of the people are getting better. What is y'all's numbers in Colombia?
Okay, currently we have 60,000 people infected. From that people, about 26,000 has been recovered. We still have about 33 something currently infected with the virus, people who is ill. We're gonna get around 2,000 and a half of people who has died. Most of the people who have died are people with problems of diabetes, obesity, heart problems. Usually, more than the 90% are older people who has medical problems before, or if they're not old, they have medical problems. Few ones are really people who were young and healthy. We did not have any different protocol than the one from the World Health Organization, despite that we all, or at least the people who believe, who thinks like us, that are Republicans, that has a strong conservative ideas, we are now are aware that these global organizations are completely manipulated by the left. So this is a shame for the world, because it's crazy that having a system that killed more than 100 million people, in communism or in fascism, now these kind of ideologies are the ones who control the United Nations and the World Health Organization. We did the standard protocol. We didn't did anything exceptional, anything different. Our rates are better, as I told you, as our neighbors. I didn't talk about Peru. Peru is very curious, Bianca. Peru had the quarantine before Colombia, and today they got the worst numbers in Latin America. If you compare the numbers per capita, per million of inhabitants, the worst is Peru, the second worst is Panama. Not Brazil, as the media try to say all the time against Bolsonaro, like against Trump. Of course, Brazil has more than 215 million people. It's not the same if you compare that population as if you do it with countries like us that have 50 million. So if you compare it per capita, per million of inhabitants, the worst is Peru, the second worst is Panama. I think Brazil is the third or the fourth.
Wow. So, very interesting. Ajá, Orlando, ¿lo querías decir en español?
Sí, más o menos lo voy a cortar un poquito porque es bastante información, pero sí para nuestro público hispano. Lo que la senadora nos está compartiendo es que Perú es el país sudamericano con más infectados, por la razón de que, bueno, los noticieros acá nos han dicho siempre que es Brasil, pero la senadora nos confirma que en base a la población que tiene Brasil, no es posible que Brasil sea el que tiene más infectados, sino que es Perú porque es basado conforme al número de habitantes que tiene cada país. Entonces es Perú y le sigue Panamá, ¿es correcto?
Así es.
Wow. Wow. Rolando, ¿tenías algo más?
Al final, sigue con la lista que tienes y al final ya.
Okay. So, Senator Cabal, otra cosa. Now I'm speaking Spanish too. So, one of the things that we're very curious is, what would you say the current situation is or relationship with Colombia and the United States? Does your government, are they working with the United States? Do you guys feel that you support the president here, or would you say that there's not a very good relationship? I think our listeners would like to know where Colombia stands along with the United States.
Colombia is one of the best U.S. allies, especially in the fighting against kingpins, narco-traffic, FARC, or these guerrilla groups that has been killing Colombians since 80 years ago, since before they were founded, because people does not study their own history.
Yes.
If they study the Latin people, get curious about their history. Since the 20s, Lenin ordered to internationalize revolution. The name of the policy at that time was the Cominter, the Internacional Comunista.
Yes.
I don't know how to translate it in English. It's the Comintern Internacional Comunista. So that's why they sent and they train people in Moscow and send them back to Chile, to Venezuela, to Colombia, to Mexico, to Cuba. And that's how you get how things evolved, how things get like in the Cuban Revolution, how in the 60s the Cuban army getting the Venezuelan coasts and were fighting with the Venezuelan army. That's how they drop all this poison in Colombia. And in the 60s, the guerrillas, 3 guerrilla groups were found. So we have been living violence since very long time ago. And the US, the Americans, were always trying to help us. Always trying, like to make an effort for us to get stronger democratic institutions.
Wow.
Today is the same, but
Mm-hmm.
today, Bianca, there is a
Yes.
problem.
Mm.
Usually, when you trade, you need that partners like the US buy your goods, buy what you sell,
Right.
because otherwise you are getting in the commercial balance. You get many things from outside, but you don't get a buyer outside. And
Mm.
today, what China is doing everywhere is that they are getting with cash to get all the things that they need because they have a lot of population. So that's how they have been investing in Africa and in Latin America. And what I see is that the US government forgets that they better help us, not giving any present, help us on building a better commercial relationship. It
Mhm.
means to flexibilize the restriction, to let us export our goods, so we don't have to see China
Mm-hmm.
as a good partner, because China has always a double standard.
Ujú.
Yes. Yes. Rolando, you want to translate that?
Sí, claro. Igual lo voy a cortar un poquito. Este, ah, sí que nos comenta la senadora que desde los 1920 más o menos, Rusia ha trabajado en obviamente enviar el comunismo hacia América, ¿verdad? Y ha habido grupos en todo Latinoamérica, incluyendo México, ¿verdad? Que han iniciado o que apoyan el comunismo. De hecho, meto un poquito de mi cosecha a la plática, ¿no? Aquí en la ciudad de Monterrey, en México, hace años, María Fernanda, había un grupo que se llamaban Los Rojos o algo así era. Yo conocí una persona que era el líder comunista de la ciudad de Monterrey. Gracias a Dios se acabaron. Pero lo que ella nos comenta es cierto. Y también algo bien importante que yo estoy de acuerdo, María Fernanda, contigo es que yo creo que Estados Unidos debe hacer más relaciones comerciales con Latinoamérica para apoyarnos como países vecinos y no dar entrada a otras economías, ¿no? Como la de China, que no solamente nos quieren ofrecer algo de lo que ellos han hecho como riqueza, sino que el principal motivo de ellos es traer el comunismo a América. Y eso es lo que menos necesitamos. Y estoy de acuerdo con María Fernanda de que entre Estados Unidos y Latinoamérica debe haber mejor relación comercial. No le pedí que lo que ella comenta es que Colombia no le está pidiendo nada a Estados Unidos de ayuda, nada más por recibir ayuda, sino que exista una mejor relación comercial entre ambos países. Estoy de acuerdo con eso.
Yes.
Sí, necesitan, they need more help with the trade so that they can survive as a country. That's really good. So would you say that our the ambassadors, or do you feel that that relationship has Colombia had that conversation with the United States of the importance of that trade?
I think so. I think the government has been talking about that. But we have to move forward. We have to move in the way where we can be stronger, selling goods that we have here, and that you have a big market that can consume that.
Right.
We also import technology from the US. We import many things. But for now, if we don't start thinking on how are we going to revive our economies, how are we going to promote all this individual capacity of getting the proper well-being, the richness for our own efforts as a society, then we will be very, very vulnerable. And of course, you know that vulnerability, it's a moment that enemies take advantage of. It's
Yes.
poverty, it's sadness, it's all the feelings that you can collect when you have to face a pandemic like we're facing. So for now, we need to move and stopping thinking on how are we going to deal with the virus, because the virus is already here and it's going to leave sooner or later. If it stays like a normal flu. But now we have to be very creative on how we're going to take advantage of when and where our economies can start moving again.
Yes. What, just so that our listeners know, what does Colombia, when you're saying that we need to help y'all with trade or buy from y'all and other countries need to buy, what would you say those goods are? What does Colombia have to offer our countries?
Food. For example, meat. We
Okay.
have a country, you know, that we don't have seasons, and our cattle eat just grass. Our cattle are not fed with grains like in the US. Our cattle are fed with natural grass. You just get the sun and the grass. So for all this new wave of organic food, our meat is perfect. If we could start, and we have a very good cattle amount of cattle here, I think it's around 24 million. If we could export meat to the US, for us it will be because it will irrigate many peasants that have small amount of cattle. You know that the cattle holders mostly are poor. Around 600,000 has 17, 18 cattle. So if we start exporting meat, it means that the barriers, sanitarian barriers that usually are used just to block trade, not because they really are barriers to preserve health as a health care. If we can get these barriers out and promoting our goods, what we grow, it will be perfect. Currently, we are sending avocados. It's a very good business because I don't know if you know, but it's funny. The Americans, how do you say el aguacate? No, es ¿cómo se llama la mezcla que ustedes hacen rolando en México?
O el guacamole.
The guacamole.
Guacamole.
The guacamole,
yeah.
You know, the Americans don't have today enough guacamole. Mexico cannot provide enough avocados. So it opened a window for us. So we are exporting avocados to the US. Now we get the peppers. The peppers is the name. The pepper.
Yes.
The
peppers.
red ones.
The red peppers.
The red peppers outside. And so these are windows of trade that we have to take advantage, and we have to open. If it occurs for us, it's much better to have a partner like the US and not China.
Ajá.
Rolando, do you want to?
Sí, lo voy a resumir otra vez. Sí, muy importante, María Fernanda. Qué bueno que mencionas esto. Siempre los países latinos son muy abundantes en producir alimento, y Colombia es uno de ellos. Lo que nos comenta la senadora es que como el clima de Colombia es, vamos a decir, un clima perfecto, entonces todo el año se puede producir tanto fruta o alimento como ganado. El ganado come zacate natural, ¿no? Que nace naturalmente con la vitamina del sol, y es una carne orgánica, que es lo que más necesitamos por acá, ¿verdad? Comida orgánica.
Sí.
Y que es como se puede, Colombia compra tecnología de Estados Unidos, y la forma de compensarlo sería que Estados Unidos, ¿verdad?, consuma de Colombia tanto fruta, verdura o la carne orgánica que se produce por allá. Por acá sabemos, María Fernanda, que la mayor parte de Sudamérica producen carne de primer nivel, por el tipo de zacate que ustedes producen por allá. La carne es de primera, de la mejor del mundo. De hecho, les comento, y Bianca lo sabe, por aquí hay algunos restaurantes, ¿no?, que tienen el nombre de Brasil porque son muy famosos por los cortes que ellos tienen, pero sabemos que también no solamente Brasil, que Colombia y Perú y otros países producen la misma calidad de carne. Esperemos que así sea, María Fernanda, que podamos entre ambas naciones poder tener esos enlaces comerciales.
I think that's excellent. I love that she's giving us this insight. I honestly really wouldn't have known what Colombia was good, what products would be good, and I think that Rolando and I can agree that here in the United States, I think that would be a wise choice if we looked at that and went and bought our meat from Colombia, knowing that it is more organic and more good for us. As well as I love avocados, so that's one of my favorite. That's one of my favorite. I can eat that all day. And so one of our listeners here, Robert, says, and don't forget your coffee. You're known for your coffee. So,
claro.
So absolutely. Yes, absolutely. Well, you've brought some good points up. I really want to ask you this question, knowing that we've talked about COVID and you've talked about, what Colombia has really, the climate and what you guys have had to put up with in Colombia and how you have been losing people to the cartels and the narcos. We are faced with something right now in the United States, and I know you know too well of it. You're neighbors to Venezuela, and you know that there's, here in the United States we have two parties: the Republican and the Democrats. Those are the most prominent parties, or the largest parties. And then of course they're like the Green Party and the Libertarian Party, but they're not as big as the Republican and the Democrat. And the Democrat Party here in the United States has been pretty much infiltrated by the communists. And we're seeing that they really haven't let anything go to waste right now, especially utilizing this health issue with the COVID and exploiting it and using it at all levels. Knowing what you know, what you've been fighting in Colombia, you pretty much have been fighting not just narcos, kingpins. You've been fighting battles with communism as well, and communism is next door and all around you and everywhere. What would you say is more dangerous, narcos and kingpins or the communists themselves? That's a very, I think, important question for us here, because we're fighting a really big animal right now. And I think our Latin Americans countries can really shed some light. Can you give us some kind of insight into what you think or what you feel or you see, or based on your experience in, being in the governmental, you're a senator in Colombia, that's huge. What would you say is more dangerous to the stabilization or the survival of a country?
Well, we have been facing communist guerrillas. We have Communist Party. The Communist Party was never forbidden to act. I don't know why, but it's still there. They have been always, they have always been a minority, but here happens the same with the Democrats in the US. We have in the past liberals and conservatives, two big parties. We suffer violence among those parties. That's true. Terrible violence during the 40s, the 50s. Then they made a pact, an agreement of a peace deal. So they were changing the presidency. They were alternating presidencies. But at the same time, we get the Communist Party killing people. What the Liberal Party did was despite they get many of their leaders from the rural areas killed by the communists, they didn't care, and they opened the possibility for the mobilized guerrillas at that time, at the end of the 60s, to get them into the Liberal Party, and they amnesty them, governments amnesty them. They always say, it's crazy because it really affects me how governments from countries like us always give awards to criminals. So they forgive everything. Amnesty, I don't know how to say indulto, Rolando. Indulto in English.
Indulto,
When they
okay. It's
indulto se
like
dice amnistía, indulto. Indulto es cuando se le borra las penas. When you erase
it's like forgiving something, if for forgiving somebody.
is the criminal record who is erased. So always our governments are giving to these people who has killed innocent citizens, always is an award. So the Liberal Party has some have deputies, has Congress people who belong to the guerrillas. They were elected. Some of them were appointed. Then the FARC still was alive. The ELN is still alive. FARC has dissidencies, but for me, is not a difference from the FARC demobilized in the peace accord and the FARC that still has the financial from narco traffic. I think they are the same, but they say that they're not the same. We have a movement that have died, and it was recovered during Juan Manuel Santos, the president that signed the peace agreement and got this Nobel Peace Prize, which is a shame for all of us because he did not deserve that. It's always business, you know. Then we found that the prime minister it was the president of the Nobel Peace Prize, and she has a very high position in Sweden, that they were dealing with the oil from the North Caribbean part of Colombia. And you know all that business, that if you give me business, then I give you a Nobel Peace Prize. And because Santos, they have lost the plebiscite where the people said no to the agreement, and they don't care. They didn't care at all. They move forward with the help of the United Nations and Norwegian, you know, and Sweden, always the Nordic. There are negotiators from those countries, always pushing countries like us, because we have the same experience as Guatemala did, signing bad peace processes that ties our constitution to evil socialism. So for your question, Bianca, which is worse, narcotraffic or guerrilla? Let me tell you that they are partners. They're the same. Since the 60s in Colombia, all that guerrilla survives because they were drug dealers. They were trading, first with marijuana, then with coke, then with heroin. Marijuana, cocaine, and heroin is the same. You cannot divide them. The drug are the oil. Drug is the oil for all forms of violence. We have suffered in history. We are still suffering it. So for you in the US today, the biggest challenge is because you build institutions under law and order, and what movements like Antifa or Black Lives Matter are doing is that they are moving emotions like communists and fascists do, emotions over reason. When we have emotions over reasons, we have all kind of behavior that is not acceptable.
Yes.
But you cannot do nothing because they excuse themselves in their fear.
Yes.
You can have fear, but you cannot kill somebody else, and you cannot burn their business, and you cannot tear down monuments, and you cannot do all these crazy and stupid things. That the worst of all, Bianca, is that they get stronger and bigger because of the
Yes.
media. The
Yes.
coverage of the media is the most dangerous and evil
Mhm.
for a
Yes.
society and for a nation to survive. So all of you who are Republicans, all of you who come from Spanish background, all of you who knows how our countries are still poor, corrupted, all of the horrible things that we have been living, we don't want to happen in the US.
Yes. Senator, you really understand a lot more, and you're in Colombia and you get it. You get what was happening here in the United States. You said it when I asked you about the narcos versus the communists, and you're saying they're really all the same, and that
Mhm.
you pretty much. I like how you say or have summarized that the politicians excuse them, and that's why they got bigger and bigger and were able to create more chaos, murder more people in your country. That is what they're doing in our country right now. They have been excused by the Democrats in office. All of the cities, the major cities where the riots and the looters and the people who are doing ill will to this country are all led and by elected officials that are in the Democrat Party, all the way from whether it's governors, mayors, counties, judges, DAs, everybody from top to bottom, they're under a Democrat stronghold. And those are the cities that are excusing people. They're even releasing criminals. They used the COVID to release criminals from prison, so that this riots, when they broke out, what do you think the criminals did? It's like what you're saying, the narcos and the guerrillas, that it's the same thing. They're working together. I love that you understand this fight. This is what we are faced with here in America right now, and people have been Venezuelans, that live here, Colombians, that the Latin American people that have come to the United States and live here have been trying to sound the alarms off to people in the United States, saying, you're in trouble. You're in trouble. It's coming. It's at your door. I honestly didn't think that in this year, 2020, we would actually see full-blown communism here in our country, where the local officials do not care what the mandates or guidelines or recommendations are of our federal government. They are implementing their own tyrannical agendas. It's very dangerous. So to hear a senator from Colombia pretty much tell us that the two are working together, and what you all have suffered, it just should give our Latinos here a perspective. Is why do you keep voting for these people that your ancestors, family have migrated to the United States to escape? You come here and then you vote the same ideologies in. That's very dangerous. So I applaud you, because I think that you understand and you get it. I know that when I met you in DC, you talked about being one of the fierce senators in Colombia who was not afraid to take the kingpins and the drug pins out, and you were not afraid to go after them. And I applaud you. It takes bravery to stand up to these people, because you know that law doesn't apply to them, and they'll come after you. They'll come after your family. So I just applaud you for your braveness and your boldness, and to be a senator in the country of Colombia says a lot. So I really thank you for coming and sharing this message, because it's important, I think, for our Latinos to hear that it's coming. You're in Colombia. You're telling us the same thing. You're sounding the same alarms off. So I really applaud you for that. And I don't know, Rolando, do you want to try to get and just maybe have the conversation with Senator here in Spanish about all that we've been saying so that we know that this
Mira,
message.
me gustaría mucho, Bianca, que la senadora María Fernanda lo que nos acaba de compartir en inglés lo comparte en español, quizás algo más breve para hacer otras preguntas, pero sería muy importante para que nuestra gente latina entienda de que a mí me sorprende mucho, María Fernanda, de que en Sudamérica y en países latinos la gente entiende más la situación que los mismos demócratas de Estados Unidos. Hay gente demócrata que es buena porque no entiende la situación, no conoce lo que hay detrás, solamente son demócratas por, vamos a decir, por tradición, pero no investigan, no saben qué hay atrás. Pero si tu comentario que acabas de hacer, si no lo hicieras en español, sería excelente para nuestro pueblo acá.
Claro. Yo les comentaba que nosotros tenemos dos partidos grandes, liberal y conservador, históricamente dominantes, pero que también se mataban. Aquí hubo una violencia liberal conservadora en Colombia. Pero se firma el Frente Nacional, que es un pacto de alternancia presidencial, y durante, creo que fueron 16 años, se vivió tranquilidad. Pero eso no limitó la capacidad de los comunistas, que desde los años 20 nos exportaron la revolución comunista, para asesinar líderes de base, especialmente líderes liberales. Pero al liberalismo no le importó, y de hecho ayudó a varias amnistías de esas guerrillas comunistas que se volvieron liberales a entrar a la vida civil. A muchos los volvió congresistas o diputados.
Wow.
Pero siempre este país, como muchos otros países de América Latina, han premiado el crimen. Siempre hay amnistías e indultos para asesinos de personas inocentes. ¿Qué pasó después? Que no se acabó la guerrilla. En los años 60 nacen ya formalmente las guerrillas. Hoy sobrevive la disidencia de las FARC, que para mí es lo mismo. Siguen siendo parte de las mismas FARC, desmovilizadas por el acuerdo de paz y premiadas por Juan Manuel Santos, que se gana un Nobel, que me parece una vergüenza porque él no se merecía ningún Nobel. Ahí se supo que hubo una negociación con la presidenta de Statoil, la petrolera noruega, para explotar en el Caribe, en La Guajira, un petróleo, y que a cambio le iban a dar el Nobel, justo después del presidente Santos haber perdido el plebiscito donde el pueblo colombiano le dijo no al acuerdo de paz porque nos parecía grotesco. Nosotros queremos una paz que no termine siendo una burla como lo es hoy. Es una burla para las víctimas. ¿Qué pasó después? Hoy estamos con una guerrilla que estaba muerta y revivió, que es el EPL. El ELN está fuerte, la disidencia de las FARC. Cuando Bianca me pregunta que qué es peor, si el narcotráfico o el comunismo, yo le digo que es lo mismo. Son socios de negocios. Claro. Hoy una guerrilla no vive sin narcotráfico. Llámese heroína, llámese cocaína, lo que esté en el negocio de la tierra donde estén los revolucionarios comunistas tratando de subvertir el orden. Son los mismos. Ahora, ustedes como sociedad tienen que darse cuenta ya que la amenaza la tienen en su casa, en su territorio. No es una guerra foránea, no es afuera, es adentro. La amenaza es Antifa y movimientos como el de Black Lives Matter, que usan la emoción por encima de la razón, usan la rabia de la gente, la canalizan y se creen con derecho a quemar negocios, a asesinar a otros ciudadanos, y nadie les dice nada. Cuando uno llega a ese nivel de anarquía, pone en peligro las instituciones porque ya nadie va a defender a ningún ciudadano, ya no va a haber policía ni ejército que lo defienda a uno. Lo que ellos quieren es una guerra civil en las calles de Estados Unidos. Quieren a la gente matándose. Y hay quien patrocina eso desde el exterior. Claro. Entonces, los latinos que vienen de países como los de nosotros, pobres y corruptos, que huyeron de la pobreza o de la violencia, por Dios, no voten demócratas, porque ustedes van a sembrar en Estados Unidos el desastre de lo que vivieron en sus países.
Es correcto. Gracias, María Fernanda, por ese gran consejo para nuestra gente. Es muy lamentable todo lo que dices estás en lo cierto. El día de anoche precisamente, me encontré a María Fernanda y Bianca por ahí un anuncio de Craigslist, que es una página de internet donde se vende de todo, hasta perros y gatos venden ahí. Es como un periódico, vaya, es para vender cosas y poner anuncios. Y hay un anuncio ahí que donde mencionan que pagan $25 la hora a todo aquel que quiera salir a las calles y trabajar como anarquista, ¿no? Andar haciendo desastres. Más aparte dice que hay un grupo que tiene en especial que todo el que caiga en la cárcel, ya hay quien pague su salida. Entonces, la situación está terrible. Pero gracias por tu consejo, María Fernanda.
Pero
Sí,
es
sí.
importante, Rolando, que nos pases esa información para divulgarla en redes. Si hay una página que paga para asesinar, para destruir, para quemar cosas, es una página que está promoviendo la violencia y el terrorismo doméstico. Y si además le garantizan que lo sacan de la cárcel, es porque detrás hay un músculo financiero gigantesco, que puede ser George Soros, que es un psicópata, que puede ser Rusia, pueden ser los chinos, pueden ser los iraníes o pueden ser todos juntos.
Mira, es correcto, son los mismos, pero está un poco más cerca de todos los que mencionaste. El que está pagando la salida de la cárcel es el mismo que está corriendo la campaña de Joe Biden. Es él. Nos llegó esa información y con gusto les voy a pasar tanto como a ti y a Bianca hoy más tardecito la página que está promoviendo todo esto por acá en Estados Unidos. Ahora, hay algo bien importante, María Fernanda, que ustedes nos pueden ayudar desde Sudamérica. Es bien importante que las familias colombianas se pongan en contacto con sus familiares que tienen en Estados Unidos y promovamos el voto conservador. Aquí América Latina juega un papel bien importante porque en Estados Unidos somos muchos los millones de hispanos que vivimos y que toda América Latina nos puede ayudar promoviendo el voto conservador por acá. Hay mucho cristiano en Colombia, he visto videos tan bonitos de Colombia, de pastores de Colombia, que entienden más la situación que inclusive personas que vivimos acá.
Así es.
Sí.
Entonces, todo eso, con eso nos van a ayudar bastante. Igual, ¿verdad? Para quien ve este video desde Argentina, desde México hasta Argentina, todos los países hispanos, todos tenemos, la mayoría de los países tienen familiares por acá, y promover el voto conservador por medio del pueblo latino, vamos a dar un golpe muy fuerte, si Dios quiere.
We need to.
Así lo haremos. We will do it, of course.
Yes.
Remember that Latins in their inner self are conservatives. Latins love to have a family, love to preserve a family. Unfortunately, in our countries, because of poverty and other reasons, most of the families are a single mother who has to raise their kids. And we know that that's the basic problem today from the Black communities. What is happening in the Black communities is the lack of the father as a consequence of the public policies which prefer to subsidize, to give assistance to the children born without a marriage. I don't know how to say that in English, which is hijos naturales. That's how we say it in Spanish. So, of course, no one is going to be married if you're going to get a check for each of your children getting you know, that you get out of the marriage. This is the worst. It has happened before with these policies. It destroys family, it destroys culture, it destroys morals, and we have to fight against that. Why the governments don't help poor families? Because it has a wife and a husband. Why they do prefer of course a single woman, it's how can I say it? It's more vulnerable, but doing that, what you keep is poverty. What you keep is getting these children raised without a father, without authority, and easily becoming criminals. So we have to
Yes,
be aware of it. And Latin
Mhm.
families want to be together. We belong to the same Judeo-Christian origin.
Mhm.
yes,
Yes.
yes.
We have the same beliefs and thoughts. We are
Mhm.
not Muslims. We are not Buddhists. If you want to be that, is your choice because it's still a free society. But if you want to be free, you have to keep institutions.
Ajá.
Yes, yes, you're correct. So, Senator, I want to ask you this too. This has been a great conversation with you. To know that you are so knowledgeable and have so much wisdom about world and current events, and you know exactly what we're going through here in the United States, all the way from Colombia. We hear that there's a possibility you may be running for president of Colombia one day. What is there some truth to that?
I want to get again into the Senate. I was first in the House of Representatives. Then it's the first time that I'm a senator. I want to get against in the Senate. But if there's the possibility to be in the pre-candidates, I would like to do that. First, because you're able to understand many different aspects of the country, and not just the political, just the social, but you have to understand deeply how to develop a country that has a lot of opportunities like Colombia, but also a lot of challenges. So doing
Sí.
that, if I can do it, I would do it more to know and to be more committed on understanding how we get a better Colombia. And as I usually repeat, Southern Korea 35, 40 years ago was like Colombia, with less natural resources like we
Mhm.
have. Today, with their policies, they are one of the countries with more economic freedom first, and one of the countries with the biggest per capita income. How could they do that and we couldn't? Why that's a big gap today among all those countries like Taiwan, like Singapore, like Korea del Sur, like Hong Kong, and what happened to us?
Yeah, good. Well, you know, you're a friend to Latinos for Trump here in the United States, and as a friend, we will support you in whichever way we can. I admire you for all that you're doing, and just whatever you need. We are friends of yours here. We thank you so much for everything that you're already doing. I know you do travel to the United States because that's how I met you here in Washington, D.C.
Mm-hmm.
And so to see a Latina in office in Colombia, and you said you were in the House of Representatives first and now you're a senator. I think that you are a true role model for young girls, Latina girls out there that, don't have to sell their bodies into prostitution. They don't have to become criminals. They don't have to get paid by Craigslist to go be agitators. They can actually do something good for their countries, in which you are doing. Again, I say that's bravery and boldness. So I applaud you for that. Um, Real interesting. Somebody was asking, do you all have gun rights in Colombia? Are you allowed to have guns?
We still have the legislation where people can handle the gun, but there was a decree. You say a decree, right? A decreto.
Mhm.
Un
Un
decreto.
decreto.
Ajá.
A government
Mhm.
decree since Juan Manuel Santos during the peace process, where he forbids to use a gun. It's crazy because we have many people who work in the rural areas and they're exposed to kidnapping. And unfortunately, this government has not lived the prohibition from that decree. So we have a group who are pushing this government to get back the rights that we all had to use legal arms.
Wow. Wonderful. That's good to know too. They're trying to take our gun rights away here in the United States as well. And that's just part of the agenda as well. Again, part of the agenda. I know Rolando and I wanted to ask you one last thing before we go. Is what message do you have for America from Colombia? What message do you have for us? Is there any last words, last thoughts that you think is important?
Yes. Again, for Latins, please keep America safe, because it's a place that, despite can has problems, difficulties, as every society has. Everyone, discrimination, racial inequalities, it happens everywhere. But that's not the reason to throw down a country that give the possibility to all of us to raise our kids and to make money. When you're free and yes, because when you know that you have to be responsible of yourself and you don't have to be pointing out to someone else to be responsible of what happened to you, always arguing, then you know that working hard in the country that many people came from poverty and became rich is still a country of freedom, and is still a country where you can make your dreams. Keep America safe, vote Republican, teach your kids what's the difference among socialism, communism, and fascism, which are the same collectivist doctrines, against the Republican, the institution, the freedom of speech, all kinds of freedoms that we still enjoy when we are in the U.S.
Thank
Gracias,
you, Rolando.
María Fernanda.
Yeah.
Gracias por tu consejo para nuestro pueblo acá en Estados Unidos. Te quiero felicitar y te quiero hacer un último comentario. Te he seguido en las redes sociales y en lo que va pasando el tiempo, hay menos gente que habla mal de ti. Ahorita yo puedo ver como la verdad, un 95% a favor de todo lo que estás haciendo, y te quiero dar las gracias porque aquella plática que tuvimos tú y yo en Washington, y después conversando a través del WhatsApp, mandándonos mensajes, yo creo que todos seguimos un plan divino, ¿no? Que tenemos un llamado especial para hacer, y gracias por escuchar, gracias por leer esos versículos bíblicos que un día te mandé, el libro de Éxodo, todo lo que hemos platicado. Sé que eres una bendición para Colombia y no quitamos el dedo del renglón. Sé que has visitado a muchos lugares que inclusive la gente no te conocía, y cuando llegaste me comentabas que se asombraba, ¿no?, de tener a la senadora María Fernanda ahí con ellos. Estás haciendo un muy buen trabajo, lo he visto en las redes sociales, y creo que eres la candidata perfecta para poner a Colombia muy en alto. Y gracias por todos tus consejos.
Gracias, Rolando, y gracias, Bianca, y seguimos teniendo fe en Dios porque estamos de paso en esta vida.
Claro.
Claro que sí. Muy, muy amable, senadora. Te agradezco mucho para tomar este tiempo de estar con Rolando y conmigo aquí, que nuestra comunidad pudiera oír de lo que pasa en Colombia y qué tan igual está a los Estados Unidos ahorita. Tú entiendes las cosas muy, muy bien y te agradezco muchísimo, muchísimo por tomando esta hora de estar con nosotros. Rolando, ¿tenías algo más?
Es todo, nada más. Felicidades, María Fernanda. Un saludo a por allá tus colegas en el Senado, al presidente de Latino for Trump de acá de Estados Unidos y les pedimos de sus oraciones. Aquí vamos a tener las elecciones el día de las votaciones el 3 de noviembre. Y estos tremendos creo que cada día quieren inventar algo nuevo para ir a, pues, dar una mala imagen de los Estados Unidos, pero creo que vamos a tener una rotunda victoria otra vez.
Que así sea, que Dios salvaguarde no solo Estados Unidos, sino el mundo entero. Necesitamos a Trump de presidente para enfrentar todas las fuerzas del mal, porque por encima está la luz. Cuando hay luz, no hay oscuridad.
Amén, amén, amén.
Gracias,
amén.
María Fernanda. Un fuerte abrazo y saludos ahí a toda tu familia.
Claro, anytime you need that I speak to students, just let me know and we set a time to do it.
Perfect.
Gracias.
Thank you
Muchas
so much.
gracias.
God bless you and God bless Colombia.
Amén.
Sí, que Dios me la bendiga y que Dios nos bendiga a Colombia. Y vamos a pasar este podcast aquí por todas las páginas que podemos y entre la comunidad que habla español para que también entienda lo que estamos hablando ahorita y del mensaje que tuviste para nosotros en los Estados Unidos. Te agradezco mucho.
Gracias, Bianca. Thank you very much.
Sí, Bianca y Latinos for Trump. We thank you for tuning in and we thank Senator Maria Fernanda Cabal from Colombia for joining us today. And thank you, Rolando, for being with us.
Gracias, Bianca. Gracias a ti.
Yes, we hope to speak to you again later on. Thank you for tuning in again to Latinos for Trump. Go follow us at latinosfortrump.us and please share this message with anybody you think that is important for them to hear it. And Senator, is there a way that where can people find you on social media to follow you?
Oh yes, Rolando, you could help me with the address. I have a Facebook, which is I don't know how to say @, Maria, F as Fernanda, D as Dr. A, Cabal, Cabal. So it's Maria FDA Cabal. That's the Facebook. The Twitter is the same. And in Instagram, if you just type it, you will get Senator of Colombia. The most active is the Facebook, more than the Twitter.
Wonderful. Well, I hope that people will ask people to go follow you and make sure they, pay attention and follow what you're saying and you will speak to our communities all the way from Colombia. So again, we thank you so much. You have a wonderful and blessed night. May God bless you and may God bless Colombia.
Thank you very much.
Gracias, María Fernanda. Que estés muy bien.
Gracias.
Bye.